let's jump into things. Texas had a great game last Saturday, last Saturday. What? Who can tell? But Texas kills Louisiana Monroe, and Arch Manning's first start ever. I think what the tweet was that it was on the anniversary of Archie Manning, his grandfather's first start, like 56 or 58 years ago. So that was pretty cool nugget. Quinn Ewers also made his first start versus Louisiana Monroe, and his first drive versus Louisiana Monroe for Quinn Ewers was an interception. The first drive for Arch Manning was an interception. Deja vu, simulation, whatever you want to call it, it was happening on Saturday with the Texas Longhorns because they got a dub when they played Louisiana Monroe a couple years ago. They got a dub again. Arch Manning overall, 15 of 29, 258 yards, 8.9 yards per attempt, which is a good number. That's a number you would like to see when he does become the starting quarterback. That's actually a really good number. And what I thought was very interesting with this game was the amount of deep shots. According to anyone that keeps stats trackers, you can look this up. 10 passes for over 20 yards for the Texas Longhorns through the air. That is the most of the Steve Sarkisian era. And it kind of puzzles me because you go into a game like Louisiana Monroe, you probably don't need to hit those deep shots. You can probably nickel and weight your dime down the field and score versus a team like Louisiana Monroe. So it's quite surprising that they did do that. But I think it was to put it on tape. I think Steve Sarkisian at this point in the season knows what he has, and he wants other teams to see it as well. So now they are forced to cover the deep portion of the field. We have yet to really exploit that versus any team. And does that have to do with the defenses we have faced? Absolutely. They're playing so they don't get burnt deep. Louisiana Monroe's safeties did struggle mightily in this game, obviously, and Steve Sarkisian came in and probably saw that on tape and was like, you know what, we haven't put it on tape yet. Let's go for it. He did say after the game he wished he would have got Arch some more easy completions, which makes sense because a young guy, you want him to get easy completions, get his confidence going, get his momentum going, and it's kind of like a boulder rolling downhill, guys. Once a guy like that gets in rhythm, he's super talented with little experience, but if he has the confidence going, you can see him play really well throughout the game. And I kind of agree with Sark there in the aftermath of the game. And that's another reason I love Steve Sarkisian. He dissects himself after every game, just like he dissects the team, as you should. As a coach, you should be the first one to look in the mirror and look at yourself and then go look at your team. And that's something he wished he would have got. What I love from Sark in this game, though, is getting Jaden Blue the confidence back. Jaden Blue coming into the season was going to be 1B to CJ Baxter. And I think the confidence started going with him. You saw the injuries and lack of success early on. He had a good game versus Michigan, but that was out of the backfield catching the ball, not running. You saw he wanted to get him involved in the running game, and you saw that tremendous game from Jaden Blue. 25 carries, 124 yards, 5 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He also added 1 through the air as well. So a really good game for Jaden Blue. Obviously, we can know what he does out of the backfield, especially catching the ball. But I think this confidence was to get back rushing-wise, and I think he got it back. And you heard him today actually say, or Steve Sarkisian said, that he thought he could have played a better game. And I actually agree. There were some holes he did miss in this game, but it's not a big deal versus Louisiana Monroe. You obviously want to see him hit those holes in the bigger games coming up. And that is one thing I want to see from Texas. The running game, and when we get into the Mississippi State breakdown off Texas stats as well, has not been up to snuff. To win a national championship, it has to take just a small step forward. It doesn't have to be great because the pass game right now is elite. And if it stays that way, we'll be fine. But the running game does have to be better under Texas. That's like the one thing left for this Texas offense. The one thing left for the defense is I want to see them versus a good quarterback. But other than that, so far, so good. Colin Page, the walk-on, added 10 carries for 60 yards as well, so he looked pretty good. I've actually been quite impressed with him. He's been pretty good. Honestly, if I'm him, I'd probably transfer out, go to a smaller school and get some reps because he's good enough to play at a Division I level. Not at a Division I school like Texas, but could he play for like UTSA? Absolutely could. I fully believe he'd be in the rotation heavily at UTSA right now if he was there. Jared Gibson had his worst performance as a Longhorn, 9 carries for 32 yards. He did have a touchdown, though, and his ankle, I guess, is nicked up. That is something of concern, but he'll play. He'll tough it out. And this is a game, honestly, he could sit out. We'd be fine. Colin Page could do well in this game versus Mississippi State, but I would like to get some real reps before we go and play Oklahoma. Whether you guys hate Oklahoma like I do, which I'm sure you do since you're a Texas fan and you're watching the Texas channel, Oklahoma does have a very good defense. I said that in the offseason. I was questioning their offense mostly, and you saw that's turned out so far. Before we get into the receiving of this game, let's jump into your comments. Yes, Jackson, thank you. That is the link there for the Amazon link in the description. I really appreciate you guys are dropping that, Jackson. let's get back into the recap. So receiving wise, Isaiah Bond, 2 receptions for 75 yards. Matthew Golden, 1 reception for 46 yards on a big deep shot by for Arch Manning down the middle there. Mr. Reliable, definitely. He's been that way since I said he was on campus when he got here. He was going to be the most reliable wide receiver. That's turned out to be the case so far. I don't think he's dropped a pass yet. Ryan Wingo, 2 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. Silas Bolden had his best game and got the most playing time he's had this year. 3 receptions for 37 yards for him. So far for Silas Bolden, that was definitely his best game. Now, the question is, and he was involved the most. The question for me, for the coaching staff would be, I would have asked this if I was a reporter there, is this because you played Louisiana Monroe, or do you plan on upping his reps and upping his production week in and week out? I do not know, because up until this game, he really wasn't getting that many snaps at wide receiver, and he really wasn't having that much production. So that's a question I have for Steve Sarkisian. I don't think you'll get the answer this week because you're playing Mississippi State. No offense to Mississippi State. Mississippi State's in the ballpark with everyone we played this year other than Michigan. They're in the Colorado State ballpark. They're in the Louisiana Monroe ballpark. They're in the UTSA ballpark. They're not a good football team. We should kill them. And again, when we get to that, we'll talk about it. Defense. I thought the linebackers, and specifically, I said after the game, Anthony Hill had his best game at Texas, in my opinion, and definitely the best game on the season. Well, guess what? My eyes do not lie, because Pro Football Focus said the same thing. They said they had him ranked as the #1 rated linebacker in all of America for last week's game versus Louisiana Monroe. So he had a really good game. Also, next in line, Leono Lafau had his best game as a Longhorn. 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and a safety was the 1 sack. So overall, really good. I've been very impressed by him. I'm fully confident. Like, him and Anthony Hill next year is going to be one hell of a duo. Just a little sneak peek next year, guys. I think our defense is going to be a top 10 defense in the country. You have Anthony Hill and Leono Lafau at linebacker. You have Colin Simmons off the edge, and honestly, Trey Moore, with the type of season he's having, might come back, because I think he's probably like a 3rd or 4th round pick. He could up his status even more in the draft. Same with Ethan Burke. And then the guys in the secondary, Taft, Muhammad, Phil Simi will be playing at that point. Derek Williams. I mean, this is going to be a legit nasty defense next year. It's already really good. Like I said, I think it was going to be between a 25 and 35th best defense in the country. I think that's about what it is right now. Maybe even better, honestly. And that's good enough to win a national championship with the offense we have. And I think it's only going to get better next year. Some crazy stats. I already said the 10 passes over 20 yards, which was the most Texas has had under the Steve Sarkisian era. Texas only gave up 10 yards of offense for Louisiana Monroe in the second half. They gave up 10 yards, guys. I do not care who you're playing. I don't care if I got 11 guys from my neighborhood to go out there and play football versus Texas. 10 yards is insane in a half. 10 yards is insane. Louisiana Monroe actually had negative yards in the third quarter. Let me say this. A Division I football team had negative yards in the third quarter on offense. That is phenomenal defense by Texas. Absolutely astounding defense by Texas. Whatever word you want to use, that's what it was. It was phenomenal. And then in the fourth quarter, obviously they let up and allowed what? So they allowed negative yards. They had like 12 or 13 yards in the fourth quarter. So they let us down a little bit in the fourth quarter. But overall, phenomenal performance from the Longhorns. They did exactly what they had to do. And that's what we like to see in these type of games. To me, when you go back and look at national championship teams, which I think Texas has elevated themselves into that category, you want to see dominance over teams that are inferior. And so far, you have seen that. Texas has covered every spread they have had this year so far, which is phenomenal. And hats off to Steve Sarkisian and the staff to get these guys prepared each and every week and not to take the rat poison. So kudos to you guys. Took them to you guys. Texas dominates Louisiana Monroe.